So hi, everybody. Welcome to today's event, all about how to build a loyal community and drive key outcomes. I'm Mitch Hansen. I'm the Vice President of Marketing at OpenWeb. I'm going to be facilitating the event this afternoon. I'll start with this. We had a really good discussion for you today. We have with us two very experienced, very talented speakers. And I would say especially thank you to Emily Christner, who's one of our guests today, joining from Trusted Media Brands, OpenWeb partner, for making the time to appear with us today. And I'll let Joel and Emily introduce themselves and give a little bit more background in just a moment. But before we get started, I wanted to just very briefly introduce OpenWeb for anybody in the audience who might not be aware of us or isn't sure what we do. And then we'll get right on with the scheduled events. Okay, so OpenWeb, we are a mission-driven company on a mission to improve the quality of conversations online and to build a healthier web where content creators of all kinds are empowered to thrive. How do we do that? Well, we build products, and with those products, we partner with publishers and brands to build strong, direct relationships with their audiences. Those products empower our partners to build these vibrant communities that are rooted in healthy conversations and robust social experiences. And today we work with, and a lot of them are on the screen right now, over 1,000 publishers across our network. Including like here on the screen, New York Times, Yahoo, Hearst, Trusted Media Brands, of course, News Corp. And we host more than 100 million monthly active users across the network. So that scale, 1,000 publishers, 100 million monthly active users, it gives us some really unique and powerful insight into what really works for publishers trying to transform their businesses in this increasingly competitive media landscape and the multiple headwinds that we're all dealing with. So if after the discussion today you're interested in learning more, you can reply first, to any of the emails that we've sent leading up to the event. You can reach out to myself or Joel via email, which Jordan will post here for everyone to see. Or you can reach out to us, of course, on LinkedIn, and we'd be happy to talk. But moving on, I'll now throw to our guests here to say hi and introduce themselves. Emily, why don't you start?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to OpenWeb for having me. I am the Chief Product Officer at Trusted Media Brands, where I am responsible for the vision, strategy, design, and development of our product portfolio. And so that includes everything from our websites to CTT and OTT, as well as our video licensing and e-commerce platforms. So our platforms engage about 100 million people per month worldwide, and you might recognize some of our brands, including Phil Army, Reader's Digest, Taste of Home, The Pet Collective, and Family Handyman.
Great. Thanks, Emily. And Joel?
Yeah, thanks, Mitch. And thanks, Emily, again for joining us today. It's great to see you again. Thanks to everyone for joining as well. My name is Joel. I'm SVP of Business Development, and effectively, I head up our global publisher sales group here at OpenWeb, working with many digital media companies, just like Trusted Media Brands. I've been with OpenWeb for just about 2.5 years now. And prior to that, I was running sales and account management for JW Player, which is an online video provider in the same space. So I'm passionate about this industry, and I'm definitely excited about the conversation today and looking forward to diving in.
Okay, sounds great. Jordan, you go to the next slide. So just a quick overview of what we're going to be covering today. But overall, we're going to be looking at how to build a vibrant community, to foster greater levels of engagement, to increase user loyalty, and convert those transient unknown visitors into registered users and even paying subscribers. So let's get started. We go to the next slide. So for our first topic, we're going to look at how community impacts the bottom line. So publishers everywhere are realizing the benefits of hosting a community and putting real effort into building it. And I'll start with you, Emily, but in your experience, how has community made an impact on your most important business goals?
Yeah, so just to kind of set the stage a little bit, we've always been really good as a company, really strong at growing our user base. But some of the organizational goals that we've really zeroed in on for this year really speak to, of course, growing our known users or registered users, or however you want to define that. So those goals include things like optimizing our websites to increase engagement and revenue per visit, optimizing our websites as the top and middle part of the funnel to drive leads and purchases. So those are two big goals for us. And then, just sort of some channel level goals like enticing our social media influencers to participate organically, increasing participation in things like our recipe contests and things like that, and just helping us to retain some of our subscribers. So what I would say is that our community and the products that support it are really critical in furthering these goals. So when we talk about community at Trusted, like what does that mean to us? I would define it, we think about like, what does the user gain as a benefit from being part of our community? How are we differentiated from our competitors in that aspect? But we also want it to be an uplifting environment. We want it to be, a diverse and engaged group of people with shared interests and goals and things like that. Something that really provides a sense of belonging to people. So, I'll get into it more throughout the discussion, but our community has played a really significant part in allowing us to grow engagement and revenue. Our most active users in some cases bring, 9 times more revenue than some of our casual users. So that's obviously a really important thing to us.
Thanks. And Joel, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think everything Emily said is definitely sounds very similar to some of the things we hear time and time again. But to us, we believe that a community is one of the most, if not the most important lever to increasing lifetime value and average revenue per user. And we believe that it's kind of 3 pieces of that puzzle that allow for that. It's 1, driving engagement and retention, like Emily talked about. It's 2, converting users down the funnel and moving them from unknown to known so that they're registered. And then 3 is taking all those insights and data points from those experiences and activating upon them, which I know we're going to talk about in a bit. So certainly for us, we believe community, and community done right, is an incredibly important piece of the puzzle for digital media companies in general.
Cool, great. And Emily, like I said, you're definitely right. We will dive into this from here. So Jordan, go to the next slide. Let's move on to our second topic here. Let's talk about the path from casual visitors to registered users and subscribers. So often, and I'm sure this is the case for everybody on this call as well, our partners categorize their users into a few main buckets. You've got your unknown or anonymous users, your known users, registered users, and subscribers in the case that there is a subscription available. Generally, the name of the game, move those users down the funnel from unknown sort of transient visitor to a registered user or paying subscriber. So first question I have, what in your experience is best to drive those casual unknown visitors to grow loyalty, and what role does community play? And Emily, you can start that one off as well.
Sure. So I will say the most important thing, and I think this is definitely worth emphasizing, is creating really great experiences for our users that, and this might seem, again, it might seem obvious, but like it's kind of the core of everything, is creating a great experience that, that's worth authenticating or registering for. So for us at Trusted, authenticating in our case would mean registering for the site. So people authenticate for things like submitting recipes for testing in our test kitchen to be included on our site and in our magazines. People register to save recipes to the recipe box, to be able to comment with other users on a recipe, rate a recipe, discuss the recipe, things like that. And then in our case, subscribing means a couple things, but for the purposes of this discussion, I'll define it. It would be everything paid. So that would be print magazines, digital magazine subscriptions. It would be our DIY university learning platform. And then our Taste of Home cooking subscription box. So we have a really robust community of people both on the site and in social for Taste of Home. And, we're kind of focusing on Taste of Home for the purposes of this discussion from our brand standpoint. Like I said, people can submit recipes for inclusion. That goes through a pretty rigorous testing process. But really kind of getting back to that commenting piece, it creates, a place for people to get together, discuss openly, whether they're rating it, whether they're adjusting the recipe, whether they're saying, hey, I cooked this and thank you for your tips. Like just kind of having that constant dialogue between our users is really important. But it's not just registering that's important for us. And of course, we have all of those experiences for people to register, but also capturing an email address can be really important to us. So additional ways that we capture email include things like signing up for newsletters, contests. I should note, like we have about 5 million unique newsletter names and a universe of we have 10 million newsletter emails and 5 million unique emails as a company. So that's a really big repository for us from a first party data perspective, and one that we're continuously looking to grow. So people also participate in things like quizzes, games. When you subscribe to our magazine, when you buy one of our products, you give us your email address. So we're always experimenting with new and different ways to capture emails. And I would say I was at a conference recently and someone mentioned like, you never know if you don't ask. And I was like, I think there's something true to that, but you also kind of need to strike a balance. So people might not give you your email for something like saving an article or viewing an article. And I know a lot of publishers have experimented in that space, but they might give it to you to retain their information in a trivia leaderboard or something a little bit more compelling. And so, we're constantly testing and iterating based on our testing results in that space.
Yeah, I think one interesting thing I was just thinking about is I think so many times we talk about kind of these buckets of users and how how publishers like trusted media brands and media companies create experiences that ultimately deliver enough value to result in a sign up, right, an email address. And I think obviously those things are incredibly important. We all know that. I always like to say though that there are always going to be visitors that don't get there, right? They're visitors that maybe just aren't going to give you your email address. So while publishers are doing everything they can to drive signups, and we are building tools to help them do that, we also think it's almost just as important, or it's very important to also create value at the top of the funnel and create opportunities for visitors that maybe aren't going to sign up to just spend more time, right? And we believe that community can also be a way to do that, right? Maybe you're not asking for a sign up in that moment, but whether you're creating a reaction poll or you're just hosting a very valuable conversation, those flybys might actually stick around and read the conversation, which of course, even though it's not an email necessarily, they are spending X amount more time on page and visiting Y amount more page views. And that in its own way is valuable as well. So I think Emily definitely touched on a lot of the ways in which you can drive value to get that sign up and that email. But I just want to touch on it. It's also important to try to actually drive more value, even for those users who maybe are not ready to sign up. And we think community can play a role in that for sure.
And that's actually a perfect segue into our next topic about understanding community signals. So obviously we've been talking a lot about building community, and there are a lot of ways to foster engagement among the community. For instance, and we mentioned it here, hosting conversations like a comments section. At OpenWeb, we offer instant polling, which we call reactions. We also have like a topic tracker, which allows users to follow specific areas of interest or authors and get notifications when new content is published. And all of that, plus some of the things that you mentioned, Emily and Joel, that you've mentioned, leave this trail of sentiment data of all different kinds and different degrees of explicitness, for lack of a better word. But basically, the users are communicating their behaviors, their interests, and even sometimes their pain points, say in the user experience. So actually, this one, I'll throw to Joel first. Like I mentioned, at OpenWeb, we work with a lot of publishers And I think, that might give you some insight here. What have you seen publishers leverage, or rather, sorry, how have you seen them leverage that sentiment data and the insights that data can offer?
Yeah, it's a great question. The first thing I'd say is that I still believe that sort of this idea of these vast amounts of data and first party data is almost still, I think a lot of partners in the space are still figuring out exactly what to do with it and how to do it. But certainly community can unlock a ton of valuable insights. And I'd say that there are probably 3 to 4 main areas that we see most of our partners who do leverage the data in a specific way to sort of activate and to unlock value. I'd say they're doing it in 3 or 4 ways. The first has to do with editorial, right? So whether it's the comment section or a live blog or the reactions or polling product, these experiences are really giving our partners real insights into how the community is reacting to the content that you're producing. So which articles are resonating the most, which topics are most popular, and all of those data points can sort of optimize and fuel editorial strategy in a way that's community driven, right? So better connecting what you're rolling out with what your audience actually wants. So the first part I would say has to do with editorial. The second is advertising, right? Like you are getting emails, you are getting registrations, you are learning a lot more about what this user cares about, what their interests are, what their sentiment is, and how do you package all that data up in a way that actually enables you to increase your ARPU and basically effectively advertise in a more targeted way and ultimately raise your yield. And then the last two I'd kind of bucket, but like subscription for some publishers that are offering subscription offerings and or like e-commerce or shoppable experiences, right? The community data can really allow you to better target your readers for either subscription offerings and or certain product purchases. So I think there are a number of ways that community can unlock value as it relates to data. And I think those 3 or 4 are the ones that I hear about most and I actively see our partners using when it comes to kind of the data and how they activate upon it.
Great. And Emily, of course, love to hear what you think about this.
Yeah,
what have
no,
you learned?
I think
sure.
those 3 buckets are spot on. Just to kind of give a more practical example of what we're doing. We, for instance, on Taste of Home have a very deep catalog of recipes, about 45,000 total recipes, and I would say 5,000 highly active recipes. The ones that people are really engaging on and communicating with one another on. And we have about 30 million people that come to our site every month. So a lot of those people save those recipes to a recipe box. So we know, X people saved pumpkin pie and X people saved beef stroganoff or whatever it is. And so we have a lot of data on food trends and what's trending in the space early on from that perspective. And also is like, what's most popular, what people want to learn more about. So that obviously, can contribute to our editorial strategy. But, if we know what ingredients people are shopping on our recipes, we know what, again, what recipes they're saving, we can create cohorts to target, for our advertisers to target. So, if a CPG advertiser in the food space comes in and says, we want to hit this audience, we can obviously create a really great target there, but we also use it for our consumer marketing efforts. So the number 3 bucket, I would say that Joel's talking about. So, if we see someone searched for best cooking gadgets, or, we see someone saving a lot of recipes that require a very particular gadget or something like that, like we can say, hey, this is an audience that we know wants to buy things. We can, segment them out and target them with an offer for something like our Taste of Home subscription box. Or, if we saw how to build a bench on family, you came to an article, how to build a bench on Family Handyman, we can then, target those users with ads either on or off our site, Facebook, et cetera, to come and download a project plan, a paid project plan for that particular thing that they're looking at. So there's a lot of ways that we can keep driving people down the funnel based on that information that comes in from our community.
Oh, that's great. Jordan, let's go on to the next one. So this is definitely more of a straightforward question. And we touched on this a little bit earlier today. So, what is beyond the paywall aside from great content? So Emily, we start with you. In your opinion, what is it exactly, if you had to make a recommendation, is maybe most effective? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, again, for us, it's really been that community piece and all the different offerings that we have that tie it together. So, I mentioned a few of the things like recipe box, recipe submissions. We also have things like meal planning and recipe of the day emails. We've got, of course, commenting and rating the recipes. We have a lot of contests. We have a community called Bakeable, which, as it sounds, is about people who love to bake, and they kind of, share what they're doing in the space. And there's a recipe of the month type thing. And, everyone gathers around a particular sort of theme for the month and kind of competes in a friendly way for that sort of thing. But also things like, in some of our brands, like quizzes and trivia, again, like what are the things that really people will continue to come back and participate in again and again. And if they want to give us an email to do that, for us to save their information, even better. But really, like Joel said, it's really tapping into users who are connected to the brands, who enjoy consuming a lot of your content, who aren't one and done type users. There are a lot of things that you can do for them, both in front of and behind the quote unquote paywall.
Yeah, that makes, I totally agree. And I think for us, or when I speak to many of our partners and we think about what else can we do to kind of create value or create maybe a slightly more premium experience that might result in a user not just signing up, but maybe even becoming a paid member of the community. There's so many little nuanced things that you can do as it relates to like the community products. One example is, what we hear time and time again from not just our wonderful partners, but also community members from those partners, is that many of them want to have a voice, right? And what that means is that a lot of times they want to be communicating directly with the brand that they're so loyal to. So for example, that could mean creating a very bespoke and premium Ask Me Anything experience. Maybe it's something that happens once a month, where you have an expert, either editor or reporter, depending on your vertical, who comes in and is opening up a 2-hour session with your most premium members of the community. It's gated. It's either like you have to sign in and pay, for example. There's many ways you can do it, but it could be a series that happens once or twice a month. And that's just an example of how you can turn something that I think is viewed as, oh, it's commenting below an article. There are many ways to leverage the idea of user-generated content and make it more of a premium offering that drives not just signups, but also gated premium experiences that could drive not only return visits and further loyalty, but also, paid subscriptions. So there's a lot of ways to do it. There's a lot of options. I think it depends on the brand, the vertical, and what your readers care about. But there's many ways to tweak it in a way that that sort of speaks to your audience and your visitors.
That's great. Hey, Jordan, we can go to the next slide. I just want to move on to the next topic because I think it's related. But before I jump into it, I just want to remind everybody, this is actually the last sort of like programmed topic that we have for discussion. So I just want to remind everybody, if you have any questions or other things you're thinking about, you can enter it into the audience Q&A button. And we've already got a few in there. Yeah, we'll take those right after this. So for our kind of fifth topic, we want to talk about finding the balance between registration and retention. So to start off this one, I just want to start with a couple of stats from across the industry. And Emily, you actually mentioned something like this earlier in one of your answers. So acquiring a new user can cost 5 times more than retaining an existing one. And when you consider that on average, 10% of readers drive close to 75% of revenue, I think we'd all be forgiven for putting a bias in favor of the most engaged users. So how do you strike that balance between motivating the already loyal and registered users to stay engaged with finding ways to draw in new users? And about, how much relative emphasis would you say goes toward each? And Emily, let's start with you.
Sure. So this is a topic that we spend a lot of time talking about. I think I mentioned earlier on, like for so long, the emphasis was on growing, our total user base, getting new users to come in. And we've been really successful at that. In our peak months coming up, we'll have upwards of 40 million people a month on Taste of Home. But what we've been really good at in the past is optimizing what we call, optimizing to the average for the average user that comes to our site. So kind of hearkening back to the goals that we set for ourselves for the year that I mentioned earlier, growing engagement in RPV, driving people through the funnel, et cetera. We've really placed a greater emphasis on the former, which would be, growing our more active user base, motivating them, creating a better experience for them. And so, I'd say at this point, it's kind of an even split between the 3 areas. And I would define the 3 areas as building new, bringing in new users, growing registered users, and then really catering to our most active registered users, because there's a lot of people that are registered or authenticated that are still sort of in that need to be better activated bucket. So I kind of divide it into those 3 buckets. And we can still take our unknown users and find ways to drive them through the funnel for leads and to create more leads, create more purchases, whether that's buying an affiliate item, through editorial or buying some of our own products. And we can certainly improve our product offerings, but, based on better user data and feedback that we get. But I think, one of the things that we need to do is really find a better way to educate our users our casual users on the benefits of some of the things that we offer. And that's a hard thing to do. A lot of times people are coming in one and done. They want to find the answer to something. And, that's how most of us operate. So, how do we really kind of sit down and think about how do we engage those users that don't even know that they want to kind of be engaged with us? We need to understand a lot of metrics, like what the LTV is a known user versus an unknown user, things like LTV by channel. We have a lot of SEO traffic, but we also have a lot of partnership traffic, a lot of social traffic. And even just like, what's the value of collecting a particular first party piece of data? So, what's the trade-off if we want to do that versus serve an ad or something else? Like those are things that we're always looking at. And then, I guess the last thing I'll say is, we're just sort of trying to move all of those buckets forward because they all play together and they're all very important. And so, I think certainly, we can get caught up in one or the other, but we're really trying to focus on kind of growing the whole pie, and not just individual pieces.
That's great. Joel, do you have anything to add?
Not much. I mean, I think everything Emily touched on makes a lot of sense. The only thing I'd say is this, and I don't think it's answering like registration or retention. I think it's kind of a mix of both, which is this concept of creating more more personalized spaces when a reader comes to your O&O, is finding a way to create personalized spaces that are actually based on the end user's kind of preferences, whether that's following specific topics and getting notified about them, or actually creating easy experiences to engage, whether it's through a reaction thing or commenting. I think creating personalized experiences, not only gives a user another reason to want to initially sign up or come back when they first arrive, but also takes your most loyal visitors already and gives them another layer of like value and loyalty that have them coming back more and more often. So I think this topic of personalization, it's not easy, and I think our goal is to just continue to create more experiences on the page that allow publishers to then get the signals to allow them to create personalized journeys for their audience members. So it's not really specific to the question necessarily, but I think it's a combo of, I believe it's something I hear a lot of, and we believe it's certainly important, because I kind of, as we move forward, as the industry kind of evolves.
Right, makes sense. Okay, all right. Well, thanks a lot, guys. This so far, I feel like that we've covered a lot, learned a lot, especially myself, I can speak for. And we have a couple of questions from the participants here. So I'm just gonna read them, and you guys can kind of jump in. I'll start with the first question that we received. This one's from Carolyn, and sorry if I'm getting your last name wrong, but it looks like Golic. Her question is, what trends do you see in the media industry for the next 3 to 5 years? And do you think they'll be more positive or more negative for community building?
I mean, I can jump in there. So obviously, I think one of the biggest things, and this kind of ties to community and maybe even, just brand safety in general, is privacy. Privacy is obviously becoming more and more strict, more and more complicated, and something that, as every state kind of rolls out, certainly different countries, there's GDPR, et cetera, but different states are rolling out different rules constantly. We're trying to kind of get ahead of that and think forward and think, okay, well, if it's happening here, it's going to happen here. And so, like, what kind of space do we want to create for our users? Like, we don't want to feel like they're coming somewhere where we're going to, we're obviously not doing anything like selling information or anything like that. But, I think people don't have the level of trust in general with publishers, the internet, et cetera. And so, we want to really create a space that's where people feel comfortable to come and give us their email, communicate with other people, things like that. So I think that's a big one that we're really focusing a lot on and kind of trying to get ahead of in the space. And then just from a general industry perspective, I think there's a lot of, competition, a lot of consolidation, a lot of publishing companies, getting bigger, grabbing more brands, launching new brands still. So user loyalty, brand is going to be more important than ever in that space as the competition grows. So I would say those are 2 trends from my side.
Joel, anything you want to add?
I think I totally agree with those, of course. I think one thing is, I think we're going to see publishers continue to invest in other mediums like audio. So I think the podcasting space is one that's growing and sort of underutilized from like an advertising perspective. So I think we're going to see more audio efforts. I think obviously like CTV is something that continues to grow, and I think we'll see more publishers trying to get into that space. And then, I agree with what Emily said about consolidation and things like that. We've been seeing it for years, and I think we will continue to. But I think we're going to continue to see a lot as third-party cookies go away. Obviously, we're going to continue to see publishers really double down on just creating, more differentiation in what they're providing, and part of that is certainly creating valuable community experiences that give readers sort of a feeling of belonging and kind of a reason to keep coming back, aside from just the great content, but something else. So I think those are some things that I just think about a little bit of what I think might come in the next few years, in addition to kind of all the things Emily mentioned, and really all the things that I feel like we talk about all the time and all the conferences we go to. But yeah.
Yeah, I
Good
can't
question.
believe I didn't mention CTV. As people may or may not know, Trusted Media Brands bought a CTV company a year ago, Jukin Media, and has been able to expand our traditional brands into that space pretty quickly. So, we went a different route that I would say than some other large publishing companies, and buying more brands, digital brands, things like that. We bought a social video company, and it's very different, but it's been a really kind of exciting change for a company that's been around as long as ours has, and had as many iterations as ours has had.
That's great. Okay, we have two other questions here insofar. This next one's from Sofia Delgado. And I think this is really for both of you. She wrote, you mentioned about giving users / community a place to get together and hang out. What product solutions do you propose for that? And she wrote, it feels like commenting for articles may not be enough to really drive home the feeling of community. How can you create a virtual space, considering publishers are not social media hangout spaces to begin with?
I totally agree with that. I'm just going to jump in here. And I know, Joel, so we obviously have commenting on Taste of Home. We don't have it on our other sites. And Joel and I talk about this a lot. Like, what is it that can get us to put it there? Because commenting on articles, as you said, is most of the time not enough. So I think it kind of goes back to how I defined community in the beginning, which is like creating something that people want to have as a shared experience. I mean, that's very broad, but I kind of talked a little bit about our Bakeable community. It's people coming together over a very specific shared interest. It's very niche. And it's something that there's not a lot of places for people to kind of get together and discuss. And then just cook, even for us, like cooking more broadly. I mean, I think you could kind of apply it to a lot of different verticals, but it's something people are passionate about in general when some people don't like it, but the people who really love it are really passionate about it and have a lot to say about it. So it's kind of tapping into that enthusiasm for a particular space, I would say.
Yeah, and I think it's a combination of things, right? Like commenting, the way I think commenting existed 5 to 10 years ago, maybe wasn't enough, right, to start the feeling of community. We believe that it's an important piece of the puzzle, but we also don't believe that commenting is what it used to be. We believe that commenting done right, so with really scalable moderation, along with sort of like a real-time experience where you can see users that are typing, you can reply directly to staff members, you can have a badging system with reputation scores, like all of those things, whether you're placing it on the bottom of an article or as a button to the right of an article, like there's many ways to do it. We believe that this sort of new wave of what we believe conversations and commenting is actually can create a more social-like experience. Now, we don't believe it's commenting alone. We believe there are other pieces of the community puzzle, like ability to follow topics and get notified either on page or via email, the ability to quickly vote or react to certain things, whether that's in the conversation or within an article. It's all a part of the experience. And our goal is to sort of bundle all of those experiences together to then have each person sort of have their own community identity, right? And their own user profile within your O&O that can be comprised of the comments you like, the comments you leave, the interactions you had with editors, the topics you follow, the users you follow, really all of those things. And I think when we step back and we don't view it as just commenting on articles and it's more the community on publisher A, there are many more opportunities, and commenting on editorial is just one piece of that puzzle in a bigger, I think, in a bigger sort of picture around what community can be. That makes sense.
Yeah, right. And you both talked a little bit earlier about how some of the information that you can gather, first-party data, sentiment data from these different community products can ladder up to inform other initiatives. But yeah, so we got two more questions, and one's from someone who wanted to stay anonymous, and this one's actually directly for Emily. It says, you mentioned user and brand safety. how has Trusted Media Brands tapped high levels of safety?
Yeah, I mean, clearly it's very important to us. It's in our name, Trusted Media Brands. And so, I think this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, is creating a great user experience. And, in times when, we obviously need to pay the bills and find ways to diversify our revenue streams, we want to make sure that we're still keeping an eye on the user experience, feeling like, you're coming to somewhere that you want to be and not somewhere that you just had to come to get what you needed. Like, you want it to feel like it's someplace that you want to spend time. And then, there's certainly a lot of technical solutions out there that we employ to make sure that, there aren't any nefarious things going on behind the scenes, or, with our advertising in general. So we're, very conservative and up to date in that space. And as I was mentioning earlier, very conservative with our privacy and making sure that, not only do we respect the laws, but kind of go beyond that and respect people's privacy. So I think those are kind of the three biggest things that, for us in terms of portraying being brand safe.
Cool, that's great. And Joel, do you have anything you might want to add? Although I know the question was directly for Emily.
No, not really.
Yeah, that's fine.
Obviously, incredibly important topic, and Emily can definitely speak a lot better to that one than I can. But yeah, not
Of
much to
course.
add.
Okay, great. So then we got our last question. This one's from Jonathan Owens. And thanks, Jonathan, and everybody else for submitting questions. This one seems to be for both of you. Said, hey, thanks for doing this. Was curious what you thought were the three biggest challenges facing publishers in 2022 and beyond. And that question comes where we have 1 minute left.
Yeah.
So a simple one to close things.
Yeah, I'll give a couple, and then Joel can give a couple. The the obvious one, which is that we're going into a period of definitely a period of economic uncertainty, but also, a potential recession. And what does that mean for the business? How do we prepare for that? That's something that we're constantly talking about. And I think it's also kind of an interesting time because there's been, I'd say hiring challenges, and that it's a really competitive space. And, the big tech companies are scooping up a lot of the talent. And so I've, talked to a lot of publishers about that. So those are the two I would highlight.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think the first to me is just the overall battle for like loyalty and eyeballs, which we've sort of talked about, but it's an industry where there's a lot of similar places to get information, and also there's sort of the walled gardens in the social media world that take a lot of those eyeballs away. So how do our publishers create those experiences that drive differentiation and really create spaces where the users want to come there and spend their time there? And then the second one, I think, which I think Emily and I have spoken about this, but a lot of people are talking about it, is in this time of uncertainty, many of our partners definitely monetize through advertising, right? And I think this idea of diversifying, it's sort of like a challenge. It's also an opportunity, which is how do we diversify our revenue streams, right? How do we go from being X percentage advertising based to maybe sprinkling in some subscription revenue and or some other revenue models, e-commerce, et cetera. I think we're starting to hear a lot more of our partners think about that and talk through it. And I view that one as not so much a challenge, but definitely like an opportunity and a talking track that I'm hearing a lot of, especially as we go into this world of uncertainty, not just with the recession, but also with the third-party cookies, which you hear all the time. So I'd say those are two that are top of mind for me, at least from what I'm hearing.
Totally agree with both of those.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Emily. Thank you, Joel, for making the time. And thanks everybody for attending and asking questions. This is great. And again, if you want to get in touch with us after, Jordan put our Joel and I's email addresses in the chat. You can find us on LinkedIn, and same for Emily, I imagine, available on LinkedIn. Anything to close from either of you?
No, this was
No, I
great.
guess
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for joining. Emily,
Thanks,
thank you for
everyone.
joining, and we'll see everyone out there.
Bye,
Okay,
everybody.
thanks again.
Thanks. Bye.